We've got a lot to cover with you, Glenn. And first thing I want to cover is your latest documentary. And you tweeted this out. You said the most shameless liars from the Bush-Cheney administration have enjoyed great success in liberal media. That is because serial deceit is not a liability for a thriving career in corporate journalism, but a vital asset, provided the lies are in service of the ruling class policies. And here's the people you show at your Substack. You show all these people who, former Bush White House speechwriter David Frum, he's went to the Atlantic and CNN. I think he's even the editor now of the Atlantic. Bush and Cheney, CIA and NSA director General Michael Hayden, he got a contract at CNN. Ubiquitous amoral neocon warmonger Bill Kristol of MSNBC and various Never Trump groups. Also, Al-Qaeda Saddam conspiracy theorist Jeffrey Goldberg, now editor-in-chief of the Atlantic. The various scumbags, con artists, predator protectors, and fraudsters of the Lincoln Project, drowning in hashtag resistance cash and frequent MSNBC appearances. Pro-war Florida GOP Congressman Joe Scarborough, now a multi-millionaire host of MSNBC's flagship morning show and anchor of its corporate brand. And, of course, Representative Liz Cheney, longtime vocal supporter of her father and now a literal hero to the American media liberals. And so you then you got this video. It's amazing. You focused on Nicolle Wallace. Now, you say, but from her days as the Bush-Cheney propagandist to her stint on The View and now as beloved by Democrats MSNBC host, Nicolle Wallace has perfected the art of sociopathic lying like few others. Nobody is more adept at packaging CIA lies for liberals to eagerly consume. Now, I just want to share a few more paragraphs before we get to the video from your Substack about this, because I enjoyed reading it. It says, but lurking beneath her perky smile, multi-million-dollar media contracts, gushing liberal fan base, and a long list of media admirers is something extremely dark and pernicious. In a swamp of professional liars and sleaze merchants, Nicolle Wallace has distinguished herself easily as one of the most seamless and casual liars in the world of Washington politics and media. She has an unsurpassed ability to broadcast to audiences outright lies whispered to her by deep state operatives one after the next without flinching or betraying the slightest sense of conscience or moral compass. She lies like only a sociopath can, exuding charm and warmth, yet utterly vacant on the inside, except for a soul-festering rot. It's just fun to read that out loud. It's fun to say that. So here's the video that they put together. Matt Orfalea put together this teaser, and here, I'll play it for you now.
You now have a president talking about exterminating Latinos.
100% pants on fire.
The Havana Syndrome.
Headaches and a loud noise.
Clearly acts of aggression, acts of war.
Scientists say the sounds were crickets.
The Havana Syndrome. Our enemies might be weaponizing technology, beaming something to hurt people's brains.
The claims are scientifically implausible.
Donald Trump to now investigate a conspiracy theory about COVID coming from a lab in Wuhan.
This theory needs to be investigated, which is what President Biden is doing.
Hunter Biden's laptop reveals emails.
We shouldn't look at it as anything other than a Russian disinformation operation.
The Hunter Biden laptop material is genuine.
The murder of a police officer, Officer Brian Sicknick, was killed in the line of duty. They beat a Capitol police officer to death.
Officer Sicknick died of natural causes.
The Steele dossier. It may be dirty, but it ain't fake.
Obviously, the Steele dossier is discredited by far, actually.
I mean, this is the lunatic response to what is a very rational, evidence-based, fact-based investigation.
FBI pleads guilty to doctoring email.
What the report shows is something that won't be surprising to people that have spent a lot of time in the federal government.
The report left former officials aghast.
The FBI is exonerated today.
It doesn't vindicate anyone at the FBI who touched this.
They are all absolved of any wrongdoing.
The activities we found here don't vindicate anybody.
The Trump administration cleared peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters so the president could take a photo in front of a church.
We did not find evidence that federal agents used CS gas. The D.C. police used the CS gas.
Protesters were gassed to clear the way for Trump's photo op.
Demonstrators soldiers were pushed out to allow contractors to build a fence, a response to damage done during the 2 previous nights of rioting.
Russians offered a bounty for the killing of U.S. soldiers.
U.S. intel walks back claim Russians put bounties on American troops.
This mountain of evidence that we now have of bounties that Russia paid.
The Biden White House acknowledged there was little evidence.
January 6th committee's investigation into a 7-hour, 37-minute gap, possible cover-up in the records of calls, and it is no coincidence.
The call logs are complete with no missing pages. The gap is explained by use of White House landlines and cell phones.
These are the facts. Let that sink in.
So let me bring in Glenn Greenwald. Glenn, wow, first of all, that was amazing. I didn't know you're collaborating with Orf. He's a friend of our show. And tell me why you picked Nicolle Wallace.
For me, she's just such an avatar of the degradation of liberal political culture in the United States. I mean, in one sense, she's nothing special or particularly influential. She hosts a 5 p.m. show on MSNBC. It's a rarely watched network. Their audience is humiliatingly small. Almost everyone who watches them at this point is not even a lot of people, are people in nursing homes or over the age of 70. But in another sense, the fact that she actually is one of the most beloved and popular people on that network, liberals revere Nicolle Wallace. They adore her. Go on Twitter one day and just randomly insult her, and you'll see how enraged and angry that they get. And she's not just some random Democratic Party hack. She was literally the communications director for the first term of the Bush-Cheney administration. Remember, like, all those lies about Iraq and Guantanamo and torture and rendition? She was the one orchestrating their messaging and going before the cameras. And she was very good at cultivating friends in the liberal press that liked her. And she was a big reason they were willing to disseminate those lies. And then she was the communications director for the Bush-Cheney re-election campaign in 2004, the one that dispatched John Kerry in the middle of the Iraq war so they could continue the war on terror abuses. You would think liberals would regard her as an irredeemably evil person. That's how I look at her, for the reasons that I just said that ought to be obvious. And yet the fact that she is one of many people who were responsible for crimes infinitely worse than anything Donald Trump did and justified them and was paid to defend them, and to this very day continues to defend them and heap praise on Bush and Cheney, means that the fact that she's one of the most beloved liberal pundits shows just how craven and principle-free liberals have become. And it's not only because she turned on Donald Trump, because she's very good as a media figure for understanding where she needs to reposition herself in order to thrive with lucrative contracts. It's because the ideology of the first Bush-Cheney administration is now the ideology of the mainstream wing of the Democratic Party, which is why it's not just Nicolle Wallace, but David Frum and Bill Kristol and all the people that I went through, the avatars of Bush-Cheney neoconservatism, who all migrated back to the Democratic Party because they know that's the best vehicle for their agenda, and who are filling the newsrooms of these liberal staffs. Mother Jones, named after an actual revolutionary communist, called Liz Cheney in 2021 Hero of the Year. And yes, they had a couple of paragraphs about how they don't agree with her, on little things like torture and all that. But the important things like her standing up to Trump and the Republican Party make her a Hero of the Year. And when, I've obviously been devoting a lot of my journalism over the past 5 years to debunking the conspiracy theories about Trump and Russia, all the lies that have emanated from the union of the corporate press, the Democratic Party, the U.S. security state. And what I began noticing was at the center of them would be Nicolle Wallace, sitting in that 5 o'clock spot. She would oftentimes call on her show other scumbag Republicans who turned on Trump for their career, like Steve Schmidt and the Lincoln Project. She loves those guys. She worked for the McCain campaign when Steve Schmidt was the campaign manager. She's very close to the Lincoln Project people. And there was never a disinformation campaign that I had to debunk when she wasn't fully on board in that unflinching, definitive, morally smug way, endorsing and disseminating it with such hubristic certainty that I feel like the extent to which she lies and the ease with which she lies has been overlooked. And that's why we began compiling this research and asked Matt, an incredibly talented videographer, to put together. That was the 2-minute teaser for the 26-minute kind of mini documentary that he did, much in the same vein.
And it's amazing that, well, first of all, the pipeline from the being the press agent for the president and then going right into a job in corporate news, it's seamless. It's weird because, you know, the job of the press secretary, everybody made a big deal out of Trump's press secretary being a liar, but that's their job. Their job is to basically disinform people and give propaganda and deflect, right? And so then they move right into doing news shows. Like, that's the opposite of what a news person's supposed to be doing, which is why she does such a horrible job of it, because she's a professional liar. She lied for a torture program, for Christ's sake, and said it doesn't matter that we did that. So that's who that is. And then, isn't it funny that they can go right to a host job on a supposed news network? Does anything prove Chomsky right, that they're there just to manufacture consent more than stuff like that? You know, the last one, Simone Sanders also had a show on MSNBC. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, go ahead.
She pretended to be a Bernie Sanders supporter in 2016, where that's where she got her paycheck from, and then she joined the Biden campaign in 2019 and became an advisor and communications director for Kamala Harris, and then walked right out of the White House in the executive branch into an MSNBC job. And the prior press secretary, Jen Psaki, is now marching directly to MSNBC because that's what they are. They're partisan hacks. They lie for a living in the White House, and then they go and lie for a living for MSNBC, serving the same exact party. You know, Bill Moyers, I don't know if you ever got a chance to like meet him or whatever, or be on his show, but early on when I began writing, one of the biggest honors I had was I was asked to go on his show, I think 3 times on his PBS show. And Bill Moyers was the press secretary to Lyndon Johnson during the Vietnam War. And he was going before the cameras at that podium in the White House press room, lying every single day about Vietnam. And he basically spent the rest of his life kind of making amends for it, you know, absolving himself of that sin that plagued him so much by being an independent journalist and trying to shed light on how the government lies, because that is what that job is. So if you look at who is filling these liberal outlets, it's not just press secretaries who everyone knows is there, obviously, to lie for the president, but also, even worse, the agents of the U.S. security state. People who are the real trained liars, like not just the partisan hacks, but like the people who lie to institute coups. They're all at CNN and NBC. Every panel is, welcome to my colleague, the former director of the CIA, formerly the director of the FBI, current, former an agent of the NSA or the Department of Justice or Homeland Security. So the entire part of the U.S. government, the executive branch, that exists to disseminate disinformation, they used to influence the media clandestinely. You know, the Church Committee uncovered all those Cold War programs, right? Operation Mockingbird and all that, where they would like cultivate relations. Now they do it out in the open. They just go right on the payroll of CNN and MSNBC, where they disseminate U.S. security state propaganda and lies right from the mouth of their own analysts.
They used to have to do it behind the scenes, and now they just put them right out there. You can't even parody them anymore. They just take the guy, the professional liar who they brag about that they lie. Pompeo, we have a video of him saying the first thing they teach at the CIA is how to lie, cheat, steal. And then they put those guys on air as if they're supposed to give you the truth about what's happening right now. No, you're supposed to put a reporter on that debunks what those guys are saying, because those guys aren't telling you the truth. But that's the world we live in now, which is why you have a popular Substack and I have a popular YouTube show, because people at MSNBC do things like this. They suck so bad, and that someone like you and Matt Orfalea can come along and just put the most indicting video together that you've ever seen. And these are the people who want censorship on social media. They want to stop disinformation. They're the biggest disinformers in the world. As Rand Paul said the other day, the biggest liars, of course, is the federal government, like we've always said here. And the second biggest liars and disinformers is the corporate media. And then third is everybody else, and by a long shot. Okay? So, well, nice job on that, Glenn. Where can people check and see the rest of that?
Yeah, it's I wrote an article accompanying the video which you've just read from, so people can see the teaser on the Substack. Well, currently the film is for subscribers only, just because so much work and resources went into producing it. We're going to make it publicly available soon as well, so people who want to see it now can subscribe at the Substack. But if you want to wait, you can see it publicly, in a matter of a couple weeks or so, whenever we're ready. But it was a great job by Matt. And honestly, Jimmy, by far the hardest part of making that video, by far, was deciding which of her lies to leave out. I mean, we left so many on the editing room floor because, this is like a partial sample. Even the 26 minutes that moves quickly from one to the next, there were so many others that we had to leave out just for time.
And so that is the problem with any kind of disinformation governance board or having social media police it for disinformation, is that, again, right there, they're never going to police that stuff. And I just did a story about how somebody pointed out that Hillary Clinton, when they planted that story about the banks communicating with the Trump campaign in 2016, her lawyer went to the FBI and planted that story, lied, said he wasn't working for her. And easily to check that, they checked it. Turns out he billed her for that meeting. So he lied about that. And he was planning a fake story that Trump was communicating with a Russian bank. And Hillary Clinton tweeted that out. That tweet is still up. Why is that tweet still up? So,
this is, as you say, the current strategy of power centers for censoring the internet, it used to be they would censor in the name of hate speech, an equally elastic phrase, but they kind of have exhausted the utility of that phrase. So they invented this completely new term that actually has no real meaning other than just lying. They didn't need a new word for it. They've been lying forever. I don't know why it's now called disinformation. They wanted to make it seem like it's some, new phenomenon that needs special kind of treatments. And the entire strategy is to justify censorship of the internet by calling whatever information they want censored disinformation. What is disinformation? People have huge differences on what is it and isn't disinformation based on their ideology. That's why Homeland Security and the U.S. government and all of these groups funded by the same set of liberal billionaires like George Soros and Pierre Omidyar, often funded by the U.S. security state, are claiming the power to decree what is disinformation. And as you say, these are the same people who 2 weeks before the 2020 election told the biggest lie in modern political history, that the Hunter Biden laptop that contained enormous number of documents reflecting very poorly on the presidential frontrunner Joe Biden was, quote, Russian disinformation. It was a lie that emanated from the CIA. Most media outlets endorsed it, a complete and total lie. The big tech executives used it to censor the story. You could not post the link to any of those stories, as you know. As you mentioned earlier, I quit The Intercept. The reason I had quit was because a week earlier, when I wanted to, before they censored my article about it, they had published an article by Jim Risen that ratified and spread that CIA lie that said that this was Russian disinformation. They told me that I couldn't write about it because the documents were Russian disinformation. All of them turned out to have lied deliberately and systematically about a crucial issue. And now these same people who spent 5 years disseminating disinformation now want to censor the internet by pretending that they're going to be the ones who protect you from disinformation.
Hey, I'm on tour. Come see me in Irvine, California, Las Vegas, Indianapolis, Salt Lake City, Washington. Washington? You mean Washington State?
Yes.
Yes. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all those tickets.